In a representation and hip hop session, I welcome you all here to the Mecca. I've been here 15 years in the School of Communications, came out of the PhD program, and actually did my dissertation on rap with a committee who had no idea what I was talking about. The beautiful thing about Howard University is it does not matter. As long as it's excellent, you can figure the rest out. So, because I had that foundation in hip hop, I continue my hip hop studies on the faculty, and all of my research focuses on Black women and the African American community. But I have done several pieces involving women in rap, from Loving Mama, Hating on Baby Mama. Some of you listened to that one. Some thought and social media research that came from hip hop influence. I just had one published about rap women battles, and have done a lot of other things. So I'm here managing this panel because I have a little bit of experience with the subject matter. We have 5 dynamic presentations for you today, and we're just going to go in order as they are listed. We're going to let each presenter have 15 minutes, so I know it might be tough, but to save your questions to the end, because I think sometimes when you hear all the presentations and all the connections and all the dynamics, either your questions are answered or you're more intrigued at the end. So we're going to do it that way. So I'm going to invite up our first panelist, which is Rikiesha Metzger. I just asked that. And there you are. Okay. A little hand sign at 1 or 2 minutes to go.
Okay, if I timed this correctly, I did mine for a 10-minute presentation, but it gives me time to ad-lib just a little bit. But I have a paper that I'm going to be reading from, and hopefully not bore you. I'll add a little bit of hip-hop lyrics in here. My name, again, is Rikiesha Metzger. I'm a student a PhD candidate at the Institute for Doctoral Studies in the Visual Arts, where we actually bring in art and philosophy together. So that's why I'm actually talking about Freud here. And I'm going to be using Freud as my basis, but then also how we can look at maybe some redeeming qualities and how we can add pedagogy to ideas and expressions of, how we use hip hop at different places, in our discussion. So again, my paper is called Respect for Women According to Sigmund Freud's Psychoanalysis and Tupac Shakur's Hip Hop Lyrics. Art is free and open for interpretation to almost everyone, no matter their background, age, religion, or ethnicity. These are just some of the social identifiers that define the parameters of certain types of art. For this discussion, I wanted to focus my attention on women's art and hip hop and how it can relate to the broader spectrum. Using Sigmund Freud's ideas behind psychoanalysis, we dig beneath the surface of a woman's outward appearance to understand that she is the very makeup of her being. Since this claim is that art can be seen as the makeup of her being, the woman becomes the very definition of a piece of work. Even Freud, in all his analytical processes, understands this, and he holds women in high value. Although he does not make this claim verbatim, we can see this evidence in his writing. This paper contends that although the woman's voice, which essentially amounts to her being, has been undervalued throughout the history of art in various forms, Freud understands the woman's voice, and albeit often unexpressed, is still of value and is treated with the same respect that he gives to his male clients. This assertion can be seen throughout his practice, but particularly in relation to his client Out of Hour, also known as Dora. The work of Tupac Shakur will help to illuminate Freud's respect for women through some of his most influential rap lyrics in reference to women. I use women of different backgrounds, such as Anna Mendieta, Meryl L. Euclides, Lauryn Hill, to shed light on Freud's lost intention of the importance of a woman's voice and the role in understanding her being, while Tupac's lyrics encourage women to, quote, never let up. Sigmund Freud was born in 1856. He's also known as the father of psychoanalysis. The general idea of psychoanalysis is that it digs beneath the surface of the individual's unconsciousness to understand the emotional conflict between the consciousness. In other words, psychoanalysis looks for the underlying cause of a person's mental state. And since I have all eyes on me, let me explain why Freud is important to this work. Throughout history, men have been portrayed as dominant authority figures, ultimate makers of decisions, rulers of kingdoms, etc. And their position of power gives them the rule over women. But as the Australian feminist performance artist Valley Export asserts, quote, the history of woman is the history of man precisely because man has defined the image of woman, end quote. The explanation provided by Export's statement supports my claim that Freud holds women in high value. At a time in society when women were not supposed to speak about their family affairs or anything else for that matter, Freud provided a space for Dora to become a relevant part of history. In his work with Dora, Freud shows his vulnerability when he lets his guard down, as he feels he has no other choice but to publish his findings. In a way, Freud's actions are similar to the way Anna Mendieta references why she makes the art that she makes. Mendieta states in a text that she read to the New Museum of Contemporary Art in 1982, quote, I make the art that I make because it's the only kind that I can make. I have no choice. So y'all can look up Anna Mendieta when you get a chance and find out what her work is actually about. In regards to Mendieta stating that she has no choice in the art that she makes, she understands that she has the ability to raise awareness of social and political issues and to promote change through seeing the value of knowing intuitively that the art that she makes can change a person's perspective. Seemingly, this is what Freud was doing by publishing Dora's work and stating that he had no choice but to do so. Freud states, quote, it is certain that the patient would never have spoken if it had occurred to them that their admission might possibly be put to scientific uses, end quote. Despite the fact that Dora would have never consented to her story being published for scientific research, it appears that Freud found Dora's work so compelling that it spoke volumes about the value of women in society. Although it was a radical act and at the time, and certainly controversial, it seems that Freud's intentions in publishing Dora's story showed how women could define their own image through their own voice. Although advocating for women may not be Freud's most memorable attribute, advocating for women may not be Freud's most memorable attribute, however, Dora makes him think about things just a little differently. When Freud says, quote, I think that I've taken every precaution to prevent my patient from suffering any injury, Freud is telling us that he sees the delicacy of a woman and he wants to make sure that no harm is done to her character. Freud says that he gave Ida Bauer the pseudonym Dora because it was a way to protect her identity. And in this way, we can see how Freud shows Dora the same respect and consideration he gives to any of his patients. Like Freud, Tupac shows respect for women and takes precaution not to cause harm to women. In fact, he encourages them to take care of their well-being. For example, in Keep Your Head Up, Tupac starts off by saying, I give a holler to my sister on welfare, Tupac cares, if don't nobody else care. Y'all all know that though. By making this acknowledgement, Tupac wants everyone to see that he values and cares for women who tend to go unnoticed. As he continues with his song, he says, and when I tell you you ain't and don't believe him, and if he can't longer love you, you should leave him, because sister, you don't need him. And again, y'all know the rest of the lyrics, and I'm sure y'all will be hearing more of Tupac. So through these lyrics, Tupac challenges the traditional view of masculinity, and he demonstrates the reverence that he has for a woman by affirming the strength of a woman, by affirming that the strength of a woman is not defined by a man. Another example of Tupac's respect for women comes from his lyrics in Dear Mama. He echoes a detailed account of his mother performing housewife duties similar to those stated in Euclid's Maintenance Art Manifesto. In her manifesto, Euclid called for there to be a respect for maintenance work, and she makes the quest to shed light on women's issues and women as artists to expose the truth and provide support for women about the reality that they face in society, where their voices have and ideas have been silenced for too long. Euclid says, quote, "Everything I say is art is art. Everything I do is art is art." Euclid has the notion that she can make work while she works. And this is the epitome of the line in Tupac's Dear Mama song when he says, "And you were just working with the scraps you were given, and mama made miracles, everything's given." But y'all know that though. And through song, Tupac brings life to Euclid's maintenance type work activities through artwork, through the subjectivity of his mother's cooking and performing as a housewife. From this perspective, we can see how both Euclid and Tupac values art as everything. And I say housewife when I stayed home as a stay-at-home mom. I didn't call myself that. I called myself a domestic engineer. So that's what, again, she was doing. She was, again, working with the scrap she was given, while, again, making sure she was taking care of everything and, again, getting things situated as a domestic engineer. So this brings us to Hill, and this brings Hill to the forefront of our thinking. One might say that she would concur with Euclid and Tupac. More than likely, she would say that everything is everything, right? As Hill raps about this interconnectedness of all things, she reminds us that the woman's art can be found in everything, can be found in everything around us. Using complex ideas, thought-provoking lyrics, and her own life experiences, Hill helps us to understand what is meant to be will be, right? These are the lyrics. I'm just bringing them in here. So through a consciousness that is out of this world, and I'm saying it really is out of this world, Hill produces an inspiring message of hope that goes beyond the woman's art. Through a mixture where hip-hop meets scripture, Hill reminds us that we are all a part of something that's larger than ourselves, and that we are all on this journey that's towards something greater. It's a great awareness of ourselves if we are open to the word. And since El Boogie spars with stars and constellations, and then came down for a little conversation, we can say that Freud was on to something when he theorized that we have to dig beneath the surface to find a deeper meaning. And suggesting that a woman's art is the makeup of her very being, we come to see through Hill that she is a living, breathing, walking, talking piece of work that's off the walls. And in conclusion, we have Mendieta, Euclid, and Hill, and we see how they utilize their social position to create a way for us to see that a woman's voice is of value. By understanding this, a new her story is created. Despite how women have been undervalued throughout history, it is what a woman does that truly defines who she is, thus defining her art. Because Freud and Tupac come from societies that are patriarchal and misogynistic, their limitations might lead people to believe. I'm about to wrap up here because but let me roll that back. I just did a mixtape there. So because Freud and Tupac come from societies that are patriarchal and misogynistic, their limitations might lead people to believe that they do not hold women in high value. However, if we look at these men through a different lens, we can see that even the most complex and controversial figures can have redeeming qualities. This work demonstrates that this work demonstrates, looking at it like this woman, I want to say what I want to say. That's the spirit coming through. But again, this work demonstrates that the voice of a woman artist can transform an environment where the individuals feel liberated to express themselves artistically, just as I have done through this work with hip hop and psychoanalysis. Thank you.
Yes, Nia's in it. No? Don't you worry about it? Huh? Yeah. So we're gonna have Dion Jones from Florida A&M University next. Jian. Dion, like
that was
Dion, you didn't say that. Dion's my best friend.
J. Sounds like a G. How's everyone doing? Thank you. I'm doing pretty well.
And if you just came in, each one of our presenters is gonna do about 10 or 15 minutes, then we're gonna hold all of our questions and hopefully have a very robust conversation when we're all done.
Yeah, the notes popped up. All right, y'all. I am Jian Jones. I'm from Florida A&M University. I'm an occupational therapist, which may sound a little untraditional, which it is. And what I found is that within occupational therapy, instruction, and education, there was very little diversity. And so what I did was I put myself in the mix, my identity. And a huge aspect of my identity that bled into the OT classroom was my hip hop identity. So my students told me that I empowered them with my big girl stance, with my dress, with my African-inspired earrings. And so I decided that I was going to show up authentically as myself at conferences on the HBCU campus as well as PWI campuses, teaching as an occupational therapy faculty member. And so we have Sojourner's Rapsody. Sojourner came to me in a dream, y'all. She did. I don't know her like that. She came to me in a dream. She was standing on stage. She was holding the mic, and she kept repeating over and over and over again, "Ain't I a woman?" That was the chorus. Ain't I a woman? In between those choruses, right, where the chorus, she was spitting these hard, raw bars about how she was faced with occupational injustices. She had to move to a place that was not originally her place. She had to do something, labor, that was not meaningful labor to her. She had children. People told her that she did not have that amount of children. They were taken from her and sold to other people, and therefore the occupation of motherhood was affected. And so Sojourner Truth, in that opus, Ain't I a Woman, with those bars, with that chorus, was stating that I am an MC in America as a Black woman facing these injustices, and I'm tired of it, so acknowledge me. And so I'm here to compare Sojourner's Rhapsody, Sojourner Truth's Ain't I a Woman speech to Rhapsody's Eve through my lens, because this is an autoethnography. Raise your hand if you've heard of autoethnography. Okay, so it's where the researcher researched. They center themselves within the research. It's a way of telling stories, but it is very rigorous because you have to take field notes, you have to compare data for the analysis, and then come up with this central phenomenon. So I'm going to try to speed through this because I wasn't prepared for 10 minutes. But we're going to do what we have to do. So again, I'm Jian Jones. I'm an occupational therapist, and this is Sojourner's Rhapsody, Black Hip Hop Feminism and Occupational Justice. So the purpose, I examine Sojourner Truth's speech, Ain't I a Woman, to the message of many femces in the fight against occupational injustices, specifically through the voice of Rapsody and the E Studio album. I compare my experience as a Black hip hop feminist and occupational being within this autoethnography and comparative analysis. And the objectives are here. I'm going to define what occupational justice is. We're going to cruise briefly through the evolution of hip hop as related to femces through an autoethnographic poem. I promise it's about 3 minutes and 30 minutes long, so I got to rush through this. I'm going to discuss the impact of occupational justice through Truth's speech, through Rapsody's album, and through my lived experience within that poem. And then we're also going to briefly discuss, or we can ask questions about how this comparison or how this work relates to acknowledgement, access, and empowerment of women. Ain't I a Woman by Sojourner Truth. She spit this at the Women's National Convention in Akron, Ohio in 1851, and she basically acknowledged that I'm not seen, I'm not heard, I'm not able to do things that are meaningful to me. Now, it may seem as if these things became meaningful to her over time, but she was an enslaved individual speaking out against inhumane activities that were forced upon her. So I doubled that down to it was injustice for her. Occupation and occupational justice. So occupation, those are meaningful tasks and meaningful activities that we do each day. Raise your hand if you brushed your teeth this morning. Very good. Raise your hand if you washed your face before you came here this morning. Good. If you drove yourself here or you caught ride share or something, all of those are ADLs and IADLs, activities of daily living or instrumental activities of daily living. It's meaningful to us to take care of ourselves. It is meaningful to us to care give for another. And so whenever there's interruption with that, it affects our identity and it also affects our well-being. Occupational justice, the right for every individual to meet their basic needs and have equal opportunities and life changes to reach their potential. Occupations are specific to the individual's engagement in diverse and meaningful occupations. So if I force something upon someone who does not want to do that thing, it's an occupation, but it's not meaningful. All right, and that's where the injustice comes in. With bioethics, as I related before, if you're participating repeatedly in an occupation that is not meaningful to you, then it can affect your well-being. And we're just going to talk about how Sojourner, that's the first MC, that's how she came to me in the dream, through Rapsody Steve, advocates for acknowledgement, access, and empowerment. And this is just some more on occupational justice, but I'm going to continue on. This research or this study was grounded within socio-cultural theory on identity because we are the sum of our experiences through social, mental, and emotional experiences, and then feminist theory through the beloved buildings from margin to center. So we have feminism, racism, sexism, classism, which goes to that womanist concept who was coined by Alice Walker within her In Our Mother's Garden. And then I also have to mention, because I pulled from her piece, Joan Morgan, and when chicken heads come home to roost. All right. Disclaimer, there is a cuss word in this poem. Okay? All right. America has a problem with stereotypes, misogyny, and patriarchy. Look, I'm just a reflection of what you hear me. I'm Lady Hip Hop. I came about because I wasn't getting much help from Lady Liberty or Lady Justice. I stood against the test of time and all those misconceptions, and even with all these complexities, I'm still a bad bitch. But you still trying to get the best of me. Wait, who I'm calling a bitch? America, not Latifah, who taught us that you can't spell unity without you and I, so I've been crossing my T's and slanting my Y's because it's been 50 years, never thought I'd survive. I gave B's to the G's, that's how I'm staying alive. I gave y'all MC Charlotte Rock. Let's call her mother of the mic. Was the one more the funky four, but y'all still took me MC light, but I'm as light as a rock. And be grateful for that poor Georgia Bob, because the industry made sure that my paper was thin due to sampling, because that hit me clear. Then America told me to go on girl with that, so I went on my Roxanne's revenge. Right after Curtis blew me and sabotaged her win, because a young woman could not be the face of hip hop. But I ain't got nothing but Moni love for you. Putting salt and pepper on my apple bottles while Spinderella mixing tunes, I was birthed to break the curse that Black women in America were used to. I then showed my JJ Fad with my supersonic sound waves. Capitalists came in and again, pissed me off, so I had to express my lady of rage because America has a problem. But after meditating with Badu, filled with light and filled with truth, the brat baptized me in the phone, and it was definitely what you want. Now I'm blunted on reality, so I L Boogie to Lawrence Hill, where y'all witnessed the first MC go diamond with her dual skills. And that still wasn't enough. Y'all, the ladies in me done had it rough. So my left eye gave me right vision to gaze upon Slick Rick's Mona Lisa. Had everybody question on me, that's a message from Queen Bee featuring Little Caesar. Trina told y'all I was the baddest, and it's a fact. How dare y'all tell me to pull over? I know it's bad. We went from spitting in the park. We went from spitting in the park to gangster group asking where the dollars at to disappearing acts. My people went from trafficking love to dope slanging and using crack because America has a problem. So on the eve of 2005, I had to show them who's that girl kicking in your throats like Chun Li. But if you're looking for this nigga to Minaj, you can leave. I done faced some dark times. We all know it's true. But Lil' Kim came through with the lights is up, saying not tonight with the ladies' night crew. So y'all, I got in my bag, and I'm talking trash bag. When Missy came through with that super duper fly swag, wearing shades to hide all these scars caused by oppression. This here message comes as a lesson because we're not less than. On MSNBC, with Auntie Erica and Ari, she stated that I was braggadocious indeed, and Ruby Ma told y'all I was conceited. I got a reason to be. Was down to OPP, now I'm against the odds. I'm here and I'm involved because I can't stop, won't stop, even with bad boys, I'm the total package, far from average. Now, I went from standing in my big girl stance to twerking. I ranged from Bahamadia all the way to City Girls, and from Foxy Brown, Rod Digger, Nonchalant, Cardi B, Lil Chat, Mia X, Lady Love, Mecca, and Megan D. I'm the Rapsody that America and the world jams to on the eve of its demise, and just like cash rules everything around me, Greene, I will rise because I'm phenomenal like Lyneia. And just like Sojourner, join me in my truth, because ain't I a woman? And since I have to ask that question, since I have to still ask that question, America has a problem. So with that piece, of course, I personified hip hop as a woman, lady hip hop, right? But I'm representing, or I've included, all the women that you see here on this screen that have influenced me to be the woman that I am today. This is the reason why I've been confident to stand in front of a crowd that does not look like me, in an area that does not include my background or aspects of my identity, to show up and create safe moments and safe minutes for the students that look like me as well, right? And I'm saying safe moments and safe minutes because if we create a safe space, that space just stays still. But when we are the moment and we are the minutes, and so we can provide that space wherever we go. All right, so Ain't I a Woman by Sojourner Truth. Why did I select Eve by Rapsody to compare her lyrics to? Because she states, if the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. Who is she talking about? Eve. There we go, right? So it was a no-brainer, which was Rapsody's third studio album that dropped August 23, 3 days after my birthday, in 2019. Each track is titled after a woman, historical figure, or modern day contributor. And so I am comparing side by side lyrics from the Eve album to lines within Truth Speech. And this is the track list. So we have Nina, Cleo, Aaliyah, Oprah, Ludwig, Serena, Howard, Maya, Ibtihaj, Merlee, Michelle, Iman, Hatchet, Sojourner, and Athena. All right, so I'm just going to run through a couple of these, not all of them. The very first one, Truth states, well, children, where there's so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that just the Negroes of the South and the women of the North, all talking about rights, the white men would be in a fix pretty soon. Rapsody states in Nina, Henry Louis Gates, when I caught some new estates, made room for myself, I'm in a way different mental space. So this is basically an introduction. Truth is saying, I am here, y'all are gonna listen to me. And she was bold with what she said. So was Rapsody. She's comparing herself to Henry Louis Gates. She's in a new estate. She's making space for herself, just like Sojourner Truth did. Skip it to Aaliyah. And Ain't I a Woman? Look at me. Rapsody states, more than a woman, real enough to rock the boat. I don't fit the status quo, blow their mind like Maceo. Does anyone know where that Maceo reference may have come from?
The player with the trumpet or the saxophone?
Come on. Yes, but I feel like it was also a double entendre because you have Maceo with the De La Soul. So when I get a chance to meet Rapsody one day, I'm manifesting that. Right? I'm gonna ask her, did she do that on purpose? Was she saying blow their mind like Maceo from the I think she looks all types of good from James Brown. It's a James Brown track. So James Brown is telling the horn player blow Maceo blow. But you also have Maceo within De La Soul who he blows up bars every time he spits. But anyway, that was the reference there. She's stating that she's more than a woman. So don't just look at her as one entity. she is multifaceted. Opinion. So, truth, and they not woman. I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery, and when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. Rapsody, rib up my rib, do you still feel us in you? Now, since we all came from a woman, and this is sample from Tupac, got our names from a woman, and I came from a woman, I wonder why we take from our women, why we rape our women, and we hate our women. And so, that, when she states, I wonder why we take from our women, I parallel this or juxtapose this specific lyric to this aspect of the speech because she stated that her children were taken from her and no one heard her plea. She just had to deal with that grief. Merely, true. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all along, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. Rapsody states, because I'm a married black, a hard truth, think about the widows, that could be us too. What's something that's common about, and I'm wrapping up, Mary Lee Evers, Betty Shabazz, and Coretta Scott King. Right, and what happened after they became widows?
They were single mothers.
That, they were also activists. Yes, they pushed to make sure that their husband's name lived on in their legacy, which created a legacy for them. So in summary, Black women have resisted since the start of this nation, and that resistance caused injustices to meaningful occupations. As well, MCs have spoken out against these injustices through the occupation of rap, advocating on behalf of their gender identities. And I know that I just spoke through Rapsody's Eve, but within the text that was a paper, I elaborated more on those different artists. So Sojourner's Rapsody serves as a model correlation of how the first MC, Sojourner Truth, has birthed all these other MCs, and we continue to work against social justice and occupational injustices. Thank you so much. This is contact information, and we don't have time for this. If we do later, then I'll bring it back. So thank you so much.
This paper was published somewhere. Can you tell us where to find it? Was it published somewhere?
It is under review. It's been accepted with
Yes.
revisions, and so I'm making those revisions to resubmit.
And where will it be though?
It will be in the Journal of Black Studies. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And what Jian reminded me of is, as I've been writing in this kind of feminist theory, Black feminist theory, hip hop feminist theory space, that what we have called women who rap has changed. So initially we would be calling it in our scholarship female rappers. Then as time changed, we thought, okay, it's inappropriate to just name us by our gender. So we started calling ourselves women rappers. And that's kind of how we identified, the people we were talking about just now. And then that has changed to femicides. So we've seen, even in scholarship in the last 15 years, that we've morphed how we've identified those who look like us and sound like us and speak up stories. So you just reminded us that there's just so much movement, even in scholarship, to identify who we are. So there you go. Forward to you.
All right. So I'm Dr. Lyneia Richardson. I'm a licensed psychologist and an alum of Howard. I graduated with my PhD in counseling psychology from right up. Full education. So I'm happy to be back here as a doctor, feeling like, I sat in classrooms. I used to come here my first year. It was like this, right down classroom, and I'm looking like we got technology, we got hair, we got new seats. So it is, full 360 coming back around. So today I'm going to be talking about the central role of Black mamas in hip hop, from Dear Mama to Hey Mama and beyond. And you mentioned something about where I'm going with this. So why am I even talking about this? Because I am a mother. I'm a Black mama. I call myself a healer and a psychologist. So understanding my tagline, what is that? What does it mean for me to be a Black psychologist? And I always do this with clients and my students. I'm also a professor. I teach counseling in the master's program. also have a practice, and I work with Black women who are mothers often, and we talk about this experience of being a Black mother in this world, in America, in the United States of America. What is it like? What are our experiences? We know about the strong Black woman, and when you add kids to that mix, I don't know if any of y'all know what happens when you have kids, but your life turned upside down, right? So these are my kids, and we're older now. I have an almost 5-year-old starting kindergarten and a 2-year-old. So even when I am a teacher, I love what you were saying, like I'm showing up in my authentic self. So coming here today, I was like, I'm gonna put some jeans on, I'm wearing my Laura Hill. I'm gonna be the psychologist that you probably have never seen before. And I tell people, even when I think about psychologists, I still see old white men sitting on the couch saying, tell me how you feel about that. And my clients, I don't want you to ever experience that and feel like I can't relate to you as a human being, because we were taught to be like these whiteboards. We're supposed to be blank slates, and you're supposed to project onto us, and we're supposed to just be and not really be human. We are dehumanized, which is what we as Black people have been all along. And so in many ways, I rehumanize myself by showing my students I have kids. For my professors, some of them, we could talk about that a little later, because of some of the foundational things related to psychoanalysis and Freud, I didn't know anything about their backgrounds. I didn't know if they were married, if they had kids, what they were into, and it makes you feel disconnected at times. But that's what psychology traditionally is intended to do, because Freud, in his brilliance, came up with something that people just stuck to, and we always stick to tradition. And I'm like, I'm breaking out of this box, because one, I have kids. And when you have kids, you lose your mind a little bit. And so I'm still trying to find my mind, because it left me somewhere. And so sometimes I have to do things like this where I talk to smart people. And I'm like, yes, I'm talking to adults, and I can think, even though my brain doesn't always work, because I had kids and I lost a part of it. So coming back to this, just foundationally, these are things we already know. This is not a new concept, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about things you already know. That Black women, have been devalued. These are the reasons why we know that. And in relating this to hip hop, I want to really focus more on this media, the culture and stereotypes and rap lyrics and what happens. So I found this article in 2012, a little old there, but that's another piece of that. Sometimes it's hard to find information about people that look like us. When you look at scholarly research, you gotta go back, it's 2012, and then you say it's 2023, so how many years later am I still saying the same thing? Nothing has really resolved or been resolved, or there's 10 years or 12-year gap between you looking at this and me looking at this, and we haven't been able to find a resolution because our research isn't ongoing. It's a stop and a pause, or even again, as you were sharing, this is what you're doing, right? I'm 10 years later coming up after you saying the same thing, and nothing has changed at times it feels. So they talked in the study. They talked about, if we look at rap, right? What's happening in the rap lyrics within the greater social context in which the music is embedded, and we will see what's happening here, right? Why is it that oftentimes when we're looking at the rap lyrics, we're blaming the people who are making the music, the Black women, the MCs, new word, thank you, or our traditional, what we think about, I think sometimes our Black male rappers or artists. We also need to look at rap music or hip hop, right, within white American culture, because that's what it existed. In the United States, we are in a white system, and the music that's produced is within the white system. So we're saying that, yeah, our men, what are the women saying? Why are they saying these things? And what are these men saying about the women? And what is happening? But we're in a white culture. And as we know, in this culture, starting from when the first Africans were forced out of their homes, killed, and all of those things, brought over the raging seas, that Black women were always identified as property. It was never that they were human. They were always dehumanized. So they couldn't be raped. There is no way for them their body, their rights to be taken away, because they had none. And then they were labeled as they were raped, and then it was said that they were hypersexual. They were making the white men want them because of their apple bottom and things like that. Things that they were attracted to, their hair, right? We know the history of why black women had to cover their hair because of what they looked like in their aesthetics. And so they were hypersexualized and over-sexualized. And so then we say, well, it comes around to black women in hip hop. We have our real vixens and our female rappers or our MCs who actually are manifestations of this idea of this oversexed, hypersexual female, right? And we talk about that these black women are empowered because they are dressing a specific way or they're showing their body in a specific way. And so we say that that's a great thing because they've taken back their power, but look at what happened. Look at what happened in the system that they're in, the system that they exist in or we exist in. So rap music for radio, video airplay includes, no secret or no surprise, a lot of sexist lyrics and images. Duh, because sex sells. There's no secret in that, and we know violence, but we're talking about from the perspective of where women exist, right? So I think we need to take a deeper look at what's really happening. And if we say that sex sells, who's consuming and buying it? We need to look at it. When we see the numbers, what is it really saying? Because this is the beauty. I love being the researcher, even though I could not stand it and being a student and doing dissertation work, understanding to really digest research, what they really like to give us, what they want to give us. But when you take a deeper dive into what the literature really saying, you have to look at the gaps in the research and look at what's not being said really oftentimes, right? Don't just look at what they tell you in their conclusion and their description, look at what they didn't say. Look at how many people they used in their study, right? So black mamas, so how is this all coming back to what I was talking about, right? The central role of black mamas in hip hop. So I just have 10 seconds.
You like your mama? Can I get a mama? I said, if you like your mama, can I get a mama?
We got grown men up on stage rapping about to talk about what they mom told them not to do, because that's what they go into. But if you love your mama, shout out to the mama. On stage in front of billions of people, and you talk about your mama, that's the first person that comes to mind, right? And everybody's like, yeah, I love my mom too. I just want to look at these three things. I had to make sure, because you said 10 minutes, and I was like, 15 minutes. So I took some things out, but I was like, okay, so what if I could leave you with three things, right? Black church, three things you can nothing else. We're going to leave you with three things to remember. Sacrifice, unconditional love, or gratitude, appreciation. They're wrapped in one. Gratitude, appreciation, and understanding. So these two men make some 2 songs. Y'all know them, right? Okay, don't let them. All right. Sacrifice. And I can see you coming home after work late. You're in the kitchen trying to fix us a hot plate, and we already did this line, right? And when I was sick as a little kid, to keep me happy, there's no limit to things you do. Man, the things I'll do for my kids. Think about it. You fix me up something that was good for my soul, famous homemade chicken soup. Can I have another bowl? Did they both talk about when they were sick what their mom did for them? The sacrifice. So this is Hey Mama, from Kanye. So this before Kanye. Before the Kanye, the new folks know. This is Kanye we know, right? 05 and all that, early Kanye. And so, but I could talk about that as a psychologist too, to think about what happened, right, for him. So there's also this unconditional love. Because when I was low, he was there for me. You never left me alone because you cared for me. Think about how you're like the Tupac. You gotta go back and listen. If you haven't listened to it with that lens, just re-listen to the words of the song, right? And then Hey Mama, I don't know the song. I don't know the song Hey Mama as much as I do Dear Mama, if you can't tell. I mean, the feel.
Old to me. I love you for that. My mommy came to see, but you supported me.
I did the opposite. This is what she told him to go to college. So I put in mixed lyrics because throughout the songs it It's not it doesn't go from a linear, there's not a linear song, right? They talk about their existence in different spaces where they were calling things their mom did for them. So it doesn't go in order. So I did kind of skip around. And then lastly, this is what the rappers, the men, the artists themselves are saying, right? They're showing some gratitude and appreciation. And there's no way I can pay you back, but the plan is to show you that I understand. You are appreciated, right? I mean, Mom, come on now. I know what you did for me. And then, hey, Mom, you do say something. I feel like it's things I gotta do, things I gotta get, things I gotta do just to prove you was getting through to me. Because he wanted to let his mom know, man, I heard all you said. I knew I was doing wrong. But I gotta do something to show that you were getting through to me. And he said, and I appreciate what you allowed for me. And I just want you to be proud of me. Hey, Mama. What's happening for me as a psychologist, as a therapist, as someone who works with the male rapper? I have a male client now. I work with all women, and men like, but I was raised by women. And so he's connected it. So I have this male client. And I'm thinking about, so what happens for men and how they see women and their mothers, right? So there is no woman that can replace a man's mama, right? Ain't no woman alive that can take my mama's place. Because of this childhood sacrifice, this unconditional love, that what she saw and what they went through together, what he saw the mom do to make sure that he lived. But aren't black mamas black women? So at my psychologist brain says there has to be some type of cognitive dissonance, and there's some incongruence going on with the way that I see these black men, rappers, treating black women who are black mamas. But there's nobody that can replace their mom, and they see their mom in this goddess, right? I mean, put pedestal, even as a crack fiend, mama, you always was a black queen. But we not black queens. So what can we do in our communities where both black women and men feel safe, protected, and valued? Because if you provide unconditional love, then I'm gonna feel safe, protected, and valued. And I'm gonna honor that and honor you and keep you uplifted. And so how do we uplift each other? That's where I'm leaving with. Like, what are we doing? What's happening for us? How do we do this? Because I want to see a man feel like this for a woman that has his kids the way he feels about his mom. This connection, the feeling. So if that's this is a real experience. This is how this man feels about his mom, right? So I'm not saying that again, we want a woman is ever going to replace a man's mother. But men have children with women. And my mind says that I imagine they don't want their kids to see they'll feel the way their mom felt when they were growing up and have to do the sacrifices and make the sacrifices she did for them to survive. And so how can we remove that cognitive dissonance and that incongruence that says that I'm going to take care of my kids or do whatever I need to do for my kids and my family the way that mom did for me.
Geneva up, but I just want to make sure that we're not going over Nia Allen. Did you come in? Oh, just let me make sure. So Geneva is our last presenter, and then we'll hopefully have a vibrant discussion.
Right. So I'll do a little disclaimer. I'll play a little song. I have the QR code if you all want to follow my slides. So while you do that, I'll play the song. The song does have some lyrics. But I'll play that first. It was getting on there. All right, welcome to the Valley, specifically welcome to the Pynk. I'll tell you a little bit about where you are in a minute, but today I'll focus on I'll talk to you about our work surrounding P-Valley, edutainment, peeling back the layers on alternative spirituality and public health practices in the STAR series P-Valley. So to tell you a little bit about me, I am Geneva Greene. I'm a third-year PhD student here at Howard University, studying communication, culture, and media studies. My work is in dance communications, and so that lends itself to studying how Black people communicate messages across the Americas and across the Caribbean. And so I study a lot around spirituality, healing practices, etc. And so you'll see a lot of that weave into our work around P-Valley as well. Pynk, Proverbs, this is our team. I did not do this alone, so this was a joint paper. And so this is some of them. They weren't able to attend, but I wanted to make sure they showed up with us today too, and honor their contributions. So I'll talk a little bit about the purpose of this paper and this research, the background, our theoretical framework, research questions, methodology, our results, and conclusion. I'll make this fairly quick because we have a kind of condensed time frame in which to present this. So the purpose of this paper, we're really looking at how marginalized people in STARS' P-Valley represent spiritual practices and healing approaches. We're especially looking at Southern women and queer players, especially transgender women, as it relates to P-Valley. How many of you have seen P-Valley? Are familiar with P-Valley? Okay, so that's good awareness. I'll give you some background and context as I move along. We're also looking at, so the intent of this paper is to analyze or understand how edutainment, which is this intersection of education and entertainment, how it can inform public health interventions moving forward, and just understanding the diversity of religious practices amongst African Americans. So a little bit about the Pynk, or P-Valley. So P-Valley premiered on STARS in 2020. It's a show that chronicles the intersecting lives of several characters tied to the Pynk. It's a strip club in Chucalissa, Mississippi. And so the show creator, Katori Hall, who is a Black woman, uses her work, especially P-Valley, to spotlight Southern strip club culture, using a hip hop soundtrack, and she also uses her work to challenge dominant frames and messages of marginalized. A little bit of background, so about public health and edutainment. I mentioned that P-Valley is set in Chucalissa, Mississippi. A little bit about public health and Mississippi as a state within the United States. It's one of the poorest states in the United States. It has the lowest life expectancy and high infant mortality. So this is the context in which we're studying P-Valley and some of the public health messages revealed through the show. Blacks in Mississippi especially suffered with chronic health conditions and were greatly impacted from COVID-19. We saw a surge during COVID-19. I'm sure many of you saw that many media, series, etc., started to have plots around COVID-19. P-Valley was no exception. The series chronicled how the characters, how they navigated COVID-19, how they navigated a series of health problems and challenges and conditions within the show or in their lives. We also understand, just from a healing and coping perspective, Black people often go to the Black church. So spirituality plays a big part in navigating health issues and concerns. But we also see that even though we have a Christian kind of lens and kind of this broader focus, there's a lot of African spiritual and traditional practices weaved into that also lends itself to root work. Root work involves magic, understanding magic and herbal medicine, using those things for treatment, right? And so we see that often infused in the Black church, although we don't maybe broadly acknowledge it. It's definitely a strong undercurrent in our lens as African Americans in regards to healing and spirituality. Our spiritual practices do have a strong foundation to African healing practices. We also see dance. So of course, dance is my focus as well. And I'm including pole dancing as dance in this context, right? And so dance conjures up spiritual connection. It helps to also navigate health challenges, whether the act of dancing or the community created in the dance. And then we think about community. I mentioned that it's essential to healing as well. When we come together, community can affirm our identities. It also promotes and provides support for us to endure certain challenges we may be facing in life. And we find community in a lot of different places. It can be church, it can be school, it can be a lot of different places, but those communities are essential to our healing and affirming our identities. So the theoretical framework, we use a hip-hop feminist lens, especially Southern hip-hop feminism. I think I mentioned in my introduction, but I'll mention again, I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia. And so I did not know until I left home that strip clubs were not a common experience in a lot of places. I grew up just beyond the footsteps of Morehouse and Spelman. And so I was dropped off and picked up in front of a strip club and saw several on my way to school every day and did not know that was not natural. I mean, not usual. I won't say natural, but it was not usual. So it was very much a part of my experience, which is why I was so excited to see P Valley and see this kind of experience within America, especially Southern experience and Southern hip hop represented on the screen. We also look at this from a representation perspective. So this is a Stuart Hall theory where we understand how messages are constructed to challenge dominant narratives or dominant representations of the group. And that's especially how Katori Hall centers her work, challenging those dominant messages and ideas. So hip-hop feminism and representation theory, these are research questions. We're looking at how P-Valley represents Black women empowerment, Black women and girls empowerment, LGBTQ plus empowerment, especially in this context, transgender women. So the owner of the Pynk is a transgender woman named Uncle Clifford. And so if you ever watch P-Valley, I love Uncle Clifford. She's been recognized by NAACP, just great, brilliant work by that character. We also seek to understand how anti-respectability politics are demonstrated in the show, how sexual agency is portrayed, and how marginalized groups navigate public health crises. So our methodology, we use a critical textual analysis approach. So we explored the 10 episodes of season 2. The reason we chose season 2 is because it kicks off with the characters experiencing COVID-19 and the pandemic. They come up with this brilliant idea to create a car wash called Pussyland. And so everybody can come and go through the car wash because you can't go into the strip club at this point because of social distancing and quarantine. So the way that they're kind of brilliantly navigating some of these crises is very interesting to watch in the show. And so we did an initial review to understand where there might be some key themes in the show. And then we analyzed the episodes more specifically around empowerment, anti-respectability. So when I talk about empowerment, again, Black women, girls, and the LGBTQ plus community. Anti-respectability, we look especially at language, dialect, and classism. So Southern dialects, since we're talking about this in the Southern context. Sexual agency, so sexual liberation, enterprise, and again, a lot of those three are especially aligned with hip hop feminism. And then we're looking at public health crisis navigation. So how are the characters coping? How are they attempting to heal themselves and the community? The results, so from an empowerment perspective, we saw this repetitive theme of family. Family is this combination of friends and family. And so what they were doing and what they found at the Pynk was a safe space. It was a chosen community that allowed them to feel safe and feel free to be themselves. And so not only were they finding that in the Pynk, but P-Valley challenges the ideas around gangs. That one of the gangs, Hurt Village Hustlers, one individual, there's a couple of gay males in the show, find safety in the Hurt Village Hustlers, and they find protection in the gang as well. So, and they find community where they could not find that safety, protection, and community in their, what would be deemed their blood relatives or the traditional family. So those things were, that family was very important, is very important in the show at the Pynk and in gang culture. We also saw from an enterprise perspective, the characters were empowered to pursue their passions like photography or stripping, or empowered to make their own choices as far as their body, because there was also a storyline around teen pregnancy and abortion, and the characters were supporting each other through that. Anti-respectability, Southern dialect was very strong in the show, and when characters were even faced with those who might be deemed of a higher class, they did not change their dialect. And so they were stern in remaining true to their identities. And from a classism perspective, there's this one storyline where you have a stripper. Her name is Mercedes. She was a teen mom. Well, she was faced with teen pregnancy, etc. She was also challenged financially in COVID-19. And so she then seeks a contract with Coach. Coach is this high-powered, I assume, basketball coach in Memphis. And she's contracted to do sexual favors. And she insists that Coach gets the permission of his wife. So, you know, it gets a little dicey in the show, right? You haven't seen it. And so Mercedes, although in society, being a stripper, being a teen mom, or having, you know, being faced with teen pregnancy, being of the poor working class, she's considered low class. But in the show, it flips it. We flips it on its head. And so Mercedes is portrayed as having very high moral standards, which differ from those clients who she's contracted for, who are deemed high upper class. And she sticks to those moral standards. Not only that, we see the Pynk, although it's existing on the edge of town, it's centered in politics, right? So there's a mayoral race during COVID, during this series, and the mayoral candidates are seeking endorsement from the strippers, right? And so they're raising signs, marching. One of the mayoral candidates, I mean, this is a little, okay, I tell you who wins, but the person who won actually comes out on a float, swinging on a pole. So it tells you how the kind of regard they have for the Pynk and the strippers, although they're on the margins of society, are very much a part of the importance of the show, the importance of politics, and what's happening in the city. So they're also in the Pynk making deals, enlisting insight, striking up partnerships with individuals in the Pynk and outside of. So it's a very interesting kind of exploration of classism and also disruption of our thinking around class. Also, when we think about sexual agency, we're talking about strippers also, but Uncle Clifford has rules, a lot of rules, right? And so one of Uncle Clifford's rules is you're not having sex in the club. And there's some strippers that, especially Roulette, she goes against Uncle Clifford's rules. And so they do sexual favors for money, but it's their choice, right? And so they're also leveraging their talents for economic benefit, power shift, and liberation. From a public health crisis perspective, we see three kind of areas: avoidance, escapism, and spirituality. And so I mentioned that the characters are navigating coronavirus, navigating COVID, but they're also navigating job loss, depression, fear, grief, death, abuse. There are a lot, it gets really heavy in this town, right? And so we see some just trying to avoid it altogether. I say they do that by just defying mask wearing rules or defying social distancing rule guidelines. There's also escapism, drugs, alcohol, addiction, love, and sex to soothe themselves in the circumstance. And then we also see spirituality. So the P-Valley characters administer root work for healing. They use crystals and seek guidance from their third eye or nature. So we see the kind of this variety of navigating public health circumstances as well, which I think is very important in the show. And just in conclusion, because this is the end, that's my time. P-Valley is a form of edutainment that allows us to understand messages around public health, especially in the African American community, how individuals may be approaching healing and coping. This information can be used in designing public health intervention approaches. We also understand the importance of family to Black women and girls and those who may be part of the LGBTQ+ community, and what these kind of family communities can mean for empowerment, sexual agency, and really negating respectability politics. For future, we do think that there's opportunity to explore colorism, which was a huge theme in the show. Also, seeking to understand the audience's interpretation of the messages that were relayed in the show as well. So with that, thank you.
Does anyone have a burning question? Oh, I don't know, you said. Anyone? Yes, please.
I guess before the question, this is like amazing. Like, if I left and went home right now, this would worth my trip. I guess my question is for Dr. Richardson, because I felt like he was calling me out with Black men, right? Particularly in hip-hop, really love their mamas, but that love doesn't really translate to the women we're romantic, well, for just the women we engage on a day-to-day basis. And so, in part, I guess my question is going to be thinking about that dissonance, that incongruence you was thinking about, where I was thinking about, can this love Black men in particular have their mamas, can that function as like this type of benevolent sexism, to where like the strong Black women trope, right, justifies extra labor being put on Black women. And so I'm thinking about, can this ideal, like, putting Black mothers up on this high pedestal, right, kind of not dehumanizes, but making them have to be imagined as like superhuman. And then we're only really gonna value women who are superhuman, and it doesn't really translate. So yes, I guess my question is thinking about, that dissonance that you were mentioning.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I've been having these conversations. So I'm married, I have a husband, I have brothers, I have a dad. And I'm actually working on a paper for that. And you know what has come up is, like, but Black women, like, your mom was there for you. You will always hold up your mom. And so there's like this, like, what women aren't going to sacrifice or hold you down no matter what, because it's some things you do that if you do the wrong thing, then I ain't with it, right? So we were talking about that, and so they're like, but women do this too. And so I think what happens is there's that cross piece, like, women are seeing the wrong that the Black men are doing, and Black men are seeing the wrong that Black women do, because we can't talk about there are also Black mamas, Black baby mamas, right? That's what we talk about. That maybe some Black men really do want to uphold their woman, uphold their children, and it's just dissonance on that end too. So I do think that in terms of your question, I like that perspective, because I think it's even as a crack fiend mama, you kind of did right. How you still see her as a Black queen, but she did something that could have been detrimental to the family. And so I think that's the piece of it. It's interconnected and it's layered. And as a psychologist, that's what I'm digging deeper. Like, I'm really trying to understand and ask the same type of questions you're asking. Like, what is happening? Like, what is really going on? I'm concerned for the well-being of us as a people. And even like you said, it doesn't have to be that you see a black woman that's gonna be your wife. It's just a woman, like a person in your community that shares the same struggles, right? We share the same struggles or similar struggles in this society. So thank you for your question.
Thank you for
And I'll take a little bit a little bit of panelist privilege and say, my article, Love Your Mama, Hate My Baby Mama, ends on that exact note, which is how can you adore your mother so much and forget that your baby mama has birthed a daughter who is watching all that you're doing to her mother while you celebrate your mother. And that's kind of where it lies in like when we'll rappers kind of see that moment where they're disconnected from that. I saw him. Yes, please.
Can some of this be a result of that unconditional love that they're getting from their mothers? Because when you get unconditional love, you're being loved without even putting anything into it. So they expect that out of their mothers.
That's a good question. And I heard, and they also said that the thing is they didn't see their dad. They didn't have a male figure in the household to see what that is like too. So I heard that, I got that feedback as well.
Yes.
Sister, you
Lyneia.
get a problem with feelings sex cells. It says, and then the cells were spelled SELLS. I'm studying and there's something that, like the way certain things are marketed, when you say it, and the way it looks or represented, those sex cells, when you think about sex cells, instead of the S, replace the S with a C, sex cells. So this think about that undertone, and I mean, it just clicked with me because also too, when like let's say a company like Coca-Cola, when they market a product, we just see like a bottle, but there's whole science behind the shape of the bottle. The shape is if you really examine the bottle itself, it's in the shape of like a human body. So just when you put that out there, just the undertone that certain things when it's like stated. So I put it out there.
Thank you. And the back of the Pynk.
Hi, my question is directed towards dear mom. Sorry.
That's
Okay, so-
yeah, whatever. I'm low.
As I was listening to your presentation, a couple of thoughts came to my mind. I was thinking about, I didn't quite hear a solution of how to make that shift. So I did connect it to a sense of immaturity and infantilization and systemic dependency. And I was thinking that behavior with the mom exists, and it doesn't exist when it comes to women outside of mothering because of that, because of systemic dependency, because of when women are viewed in a light of like a beneficial sense. And I wanted to know, how do you feel about that? Like what role do you think that plays in this whole ordeal?
So I think it's very complex, right? I think three people just said different things, and what's coming to me, like as a psychologist, is to really look at like everything that's happening. Like there's layers, there's systems within systems. So I mean, like I said, there are some. They're not all black men and all black rappers don't treat their kids, mothers like that either, right? So it's not all. So I think we have to look at it in context, and there's layers to it. For me, it's going deeper. I just did that for this presentation, and I started as I started to work on it, I was like, this is a paper. Like this is not something I can finish in 15 minutes. This is something that I need to dig deeper. So that's my plan. I don't know what role. I think that plays a role, but I don't even know where to start. Can I add something to that? So, because of me keep getting all the questions. I was like, say, not because it's my sister, I'm not again speaking up after her. How we left the same thing that we just so happen to be on the same time. I'm like, oh, you on the same time. So we talked about that before. So
opening up this discussion so that when we put the information out there, as you can see, even where our research was at, again, I didn't put where and how my research, again, I'm talking about Freud from 1892 or whatever, some whatever date he was, born. But what I'm saying is that the research is not out there, it's not plentiful enough, again, to be able to say like, oh, here's the solution. Again, you can be a part of the solution by adding to it. And so I think that that's the importance in this conversation where we actually, again, put it out there so that we're not doing all the work, again, as researchers, as doctors, as, whatever. But again, people who are actually out here too, right, that can do the work, again, know what's going on, who have, again, questions, and again, are also making their own ways of thinking about how we think about the solutions for showing up. So that's, I'm gonna sit back.
I think all the presentations were amazing. What was something that really got me was Ms. Greene?
Yes.
Your presentation on was it Pynk? Was it Tyree?
P-Valley?
Yeah, P-Valley was how you said that the Pynk was on the outskirts, but that how it was the basically the center of what was happening around everything in the show. So how something can be on the outside, but still operate as the center. And looking at like that perspective, and I think obviously with this whole panel being on women and respect and hip hop, how as hip hop has kind of transformed from going from like the focus on the DJ to the MC, which was it was not focused now, the MC is the focus, and it basically turned into like a male-centered profession. And now doing a much better job of including women as a part of the art and not just as, we're including it because. And I just want to say I like the fact that all of you have focused on different parts of womanhood and feminism and parenthood and making sure that women are heard and seen, and also that we are looking at ourselves as hip hop fans and enthusiasts. I just gotta say thank you very much. It's like I haven't seen the thing, but from the way that you presented it, I am going to be watching it.
It's exciting. I just want to plug in too. I just started watching the new Netflix special on women of hip hop, and what I love about it, instead of talking about women on the margins, they start off in the first few minutes letting you know there would be no hip hop without women, and the work that Sylvia Robinson did in promoting the Sugar Hill Gang, etc. And so women have been central to this experience and the culture for a long time, especially when we talk about hip hop. And I think that show is great in centering women in the conversation around hip hop instead of talking about women on the margins of it.
And I think that's what's so beautiful about Jian's piece is that, as she was kind of flowing, like, I know that person. Yes. It just kind of kept going and going. It was just beautiful. Yes. Okay.
They say that if you want to know what's going on in the African American community, listen to it. And I want to know from each panelist what's going on with women in hip hop. Who listens to hip hop right now? A lot.
I would say that I'm a huge fan of Rapsody. She's my favorite MC in general. For her, since the beginning of time, and for her, she has promoted the FemC and put them in the center. So I feel like she continues to do that without discrediting other FemCs in their approach to hip hop, regardless of if their saturation of one type of music. I really appreciate that in her because she's showing like this solidarity within women. And that's something that's hugely being promoted throughout the FemC collective. So I just wanted to shout out Rapsody for that. I feel like that's something that she's doing, but it's also helping to encourage other women, regardless of what genre of hip hop they represent.
I think I'll just take a little bit of a different approach. So one of the people I really enjoy right now is Megan Thee Stallion. And I was just listening to Give and Curse this morning. And something that's top of mind for me is not just her music and the empowerment that she has through it, but what's going on with her life. And this thing with Tory Lanez and this conversation I'm paying close attention to. But I think it lends itself to this conversation you all were having about devaluing Black women versus the regard for the mother. And, you know, Tory was convicted of shooting her, right? And then was just sentenced this week. And so how are we listening to Black women? How are we acknowledging maybe the distressing experiences that they are encountering and supporting them in that, and the justice that we also too need when things are happening to our detriment? And so I think that's something that's going on, and I think that's a conversation we need to dig into a little bit more and understand why there's a disregard for holding someone accountable for violence against a Black woman.
That's a great question. And in doing this presentation, I found myself going back to the old school. I don't look as old as I am probably, but also I have older siblings. So the type of music that I listen to is the 80s, 90s, and stuff like that, right? So as I think about it, the thing for me though is part of it is really like I was saying about being like how I am as a psychologist. Like I used to want to be like, I don't know how to be me and be a psychologist. Because a psychologist in some ways is like, there's like you, once you know, it's like Pandora's box. Once you know, once you pick the pill, right, the needle and all that, you can't go back. You never go back to what you didn't know before. And so it's hard for me sometimes to listen to certain songs and music, knowing what I know. Like, what are they saying? Like, yeah, like, I can't, how can I listen to this? I can't do this. I can't sit here and be like, yeah. That's crazy, right? Or it'd be like kind of like the thing with Kiki, right? You a mom now, it's like that. There is some of that level of thing, and what am I saying? Like, what do I represent as a woman, as a mother, and what do I want for my kids? And so I struggle between that, because then I still listen to Tupac and some of the stuff he was saying. So I do not listen to rap like I used to. I'll say that now. I don't really listen to a lot of music. I usually try to listen to stuff that feeds my soul. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I'm Black and I'm proud and I love it. Like the way that I think that hip hop originated. And so I feel like that's what I'm drawn to. And so, I mean, like, I don't know, J. Cole, maybe, right? There's a few people that still kind of make you feel that, but I feel like I'm into that. Like, I want something that feeds my spirit and my soul and makes me feel uplifted. I haven't listened to music lately. Maybe y'all know some new artists that got that.
So I think, and I'm gonna maybe bring in some of these elements that were up here because again, our whole conversation has been a flow. I'll say that for me, Lauryn Hill in her verse with Nas kind of brings this idea of what women are doing now, where she says, all my time has been focused on my freedom now. Why would I join them when I know that I can beat them now? They put their words on me and they can eat them now. That's probably why they keep on telling me I'm needed now. So again, even in her lyrics and talking about that freedom that they have, again, I think that they are also going against what people are saying that they can do or not do, like even with Keke Palmer and, you know, oh, your mom, well, she be out here doing these things or whatever. And she's like, listen, this is me. And she's showing up as her authentic self instead of what somebody else wants her to show up or to be. And I think that the other thing is, though, for me, because of, you know, just maybe being raised in the same household, but really thinking about the spiritual component of it and what that encompasses. I think that, again, it's a lot different than what maybe, again, it's the quiet, you know, you gotta be still, you don't, whatever. And so they really are putting themselves out there and they snatching back every single thing. Again, what they say in the Black church, that the enemy stole, right? Again, and they coming out and they're being themselves. And I think that it's empowering other people to just be able to be themselves. So again, it's also taking on, for me, judgment of people who might look or think different or again, all of those things, right? Because we already, even as Black women, have been put in boxes too. And like Lauryn Hill said, I get out. Like, I want to get out of, I know I keep referencing her because again, they tried to, again, when she came out with MTV Unplugged, they didn't understand the spiritual transformation she was going through. So again, then they said, she's crazy and, you know, she crazy in the range, you can't figure out like Casey and things. That was Jay-Z, but he took the, again, when he was, you know, they send him crazy in the range now, right? But anyway, seeing all of that is the freedom. And I think that that's what we can maybe look at it again, bring it to the forefront of our thinking when we're thinking about how these women are representing themselves authentically.
I'm gonna take one last question just to give anybody here a moment to come up and say something to the panelists. First, we were getting information. Yes, last question.
Absolutely. I want to thank all you ladies for your amazing focus and dedication to this. I wanted to say that it's absolutely amazing that you speak about topics like this. My main question is, and I'll be real quick, ladies. I grew up during a time in hip hop where I kind of saw the transition. Sorry about that. I kind of saw the transition from like 88, 89, 90, 91. Now, when you're talking about the transition from, say, like Public Enemy or Poor Righteous Teachers to a Snoop Dogg and a Dr. Dre, and that's a pretty big transition. When you're talking about uplifting your community all the way down to a man saying that, and I don't have to repeat myself or repeat what Snoop and them was saying back then. Bees ain't nothing but, you see what I'm saying? But you understand what I'm saying? So when looking at that and looking at how hip hop is now, especially for women, do you think that the powers that be that control and contort the music has an agenda, not only an agenda, but has changed the way that we look at ourselves, male and female, in terms of that, because it's something that is really, really important to speak about when we're looking at things like that. So what do you feel, even back then, the music completely changed and shifted? Somebody had their pulse on it. The music now is changed and shifted. Somebody has their finger on it. Many of those female MCs that you talk about, except for Rapsody and Lauryn Hill, men write their lyrics. Men are writing there and saying, blah, 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 you're this and you're that, you're this and you're that. So, if a man is writing this, you understand what I'm saying? Like, these are facts, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what do you feel is, I'm real quick, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I just want to get a check.
So what do you feel about the transition, and what do you feel about where we are right now? And those same individuals that's behind it still have the finger on the pulse of the culture.
So can we each do like rapid fire?
Oh, I said you hadn't spoke. Do you want to go ahead? Oh,
Yeah.
well, no.
All right, we'll do 1 minute.
Well, I mean, it was a packed question.
I know, that's why I was trying to break it down.
Yeah, so again, I would, I mean, I disagree with you, what you're saying, because you actually made a lot of statements, and now I forgot what the question was.
So I'm working on this, my dissertation is on internalized racism and sexism, and so I actually think that it is a form of internalized racism and sexism that's couched in this white supremacist, right? We live in a white society, so they're in sex sells. So you're saying layers of it's money, it's the way we see ourselves and view ourselves, it's the way men see women and how women see women. And black women, we hate ourselves, and black men hate our black women and themselves.
But why do you think Lauryn Hill was so successful with that diamond selling album? She came and she just was like, boom, boom, how, like, against like a little kid or something like that.
Let's talk about it. They're gonna go.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add really quickly. So I look at this I have a PR marketing background, and so I look at it from that angle. And some of the things that we're spitting in these lyrics, it does. Who owns the music? Who's funding the music plays a huge part. And also some of these messages have been lingering since the enslaved period. So if you go back and read books on messages contained in advertising around slavery, referring to black women as wenches, etc., these things are prevailing messages. And so when you start to understand or learn the history of advertising, marketing, and communications in this country as it pertains to black people, to love yourself, to have a certain regard and value for yourself and other black lives is radical. Because we're constantly fed these messages in every aspect of our life.
So I believe I have the answer. You ready? And I need everybody who's a hip hop head from the 90s to follow along under real quick. When the 90s kind of crews came up, every crew had one woman, right? And we can go back and we can say, okay, Rock Nation had this person, you know, everybody had one woman, and that was it, no more, right? Me Too movement just came along, right? Me Too movement says we have rights, we're being heard. Now, all of a sudden, we don't have to necessarily have one famous woman in hip hop. It was Lil' Kim's turn, right? Then it was Nicki Minaj's turn. And then everybody, Lauryn Hill was one of the first to have, everybody had a turn and everybody was connected to a group. Me Too movement comes along, women have a real rebirth in society where we now have power, we now have respect, and now the record industry says, okay, wait a minute, maybe we can have more than one, maybe you can say what you want to say because the Me Too movement has now empowered you to say what you want to say. Now the lyrics are raunchier, the lyrics are being fed by way more than just one woman, and that to me is what really happened. We had a chance, we got to have one. And now from one, the Me Too movement has established that now we all have voices. But the voice that's coming out is one that's back to where we started, which is hypersexualized and all of that because sex.
Absolutely, and men write most of the lyrics now. It's the truth. The lyrics, for many of them, not all of them. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I just wanted to answer your question as best as I could really quickly. So when you mentioned where hip hop started, it was about the culture, right? And so if we're talking about African pride and being proud of who I am, that is the culture of that area. And so that is what's presented within the music. When we go all the way to the West Coast, if we are surrounded by gang culture and pimp culture, not saying that wasn't on the East Coast in New York, then that is what's going to be represented in the music. And so that's the difference between what the Poor Righteous Teachers and KRS-One and all of them were talking about in comparison to, say, Snoop Dogg and what have you. To answer your question specifically regarding the miseducation of Lauryn Hill, she took a different approach. She was very authentic with who she was, not saying that others weren't, but she wanted people to see her. And that's the reason why she went diamond, because people saw her differently. It was a completely different approach. And so going back to what my sister in the back asked about in terms of what's going on in hip hop, to close the loop on what part of your question is there's also this Sankofa approach, right? Because we're celebrating everything that's going on. And because of that celebration, a lot of the historical aspects of hip hop is being brought to the forefront to the young generation, and they're able to go and do their research. So this celebration and this connecting is bringing us back to what hip hop is really about, but also incorporating like this Afrofuturistic mentality of where we are going. And so even with all of the bad instances within our culture, which mirrors greater society, we're still going to come out like dipped in gold, sparkling with plastic shoes, because we are doing the work within the spaces, the moments, and the minutes to go forward to who we truly are.
Thank you. And I don't have a lot of sisters, but never sisters. So that is amazing. So thank you. If you want to come up.
Can we do a selfie?
Yeah.
And I was going to also say that in this way that we just created this space, that we are creating a new her story. Again, just to reiterate that